Podcast Circle. That's the name of the product. And really the inspiration of this was I've been doing a lot of social media coaching for a long time, and I've always been trying to figure out how do we help business owners make more money on social media. And I saw this video by a guy you may know, Mr. Beast, one of the biggest creators on the planet, and he had this to say about social media.
Imagine a world where it's just you working solo and you work 12 hours a day every day for like a year, and you're just grinding, you make a mistake, you learn from it, you grind, you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you do that for like a year. And then imagine a different world where you have 4 friends who are also equally grinding in something similar. Friend number 1 makes a mistake on Friday. He teaches the other 4 people. Friend number 2 makes a mistake the next week, teaches everyone. And then like you're all learning from each other's mistakes. You're all constantly studying 24/7 and downloading each other. Like after a year, you're like 2 years ahead of the guy who was just solo. It really does make a difference, especially
what Mr. Beast is describing there is essentially a mastermind group around social media. So that's pretty much what we're talking about today. But I've added what I call community-based strategies to expand on this idea that Mr. Beast is talking about here. Really what Podcast Circle is, it's an organic strategy. It's community-based and it requires 6 or more people. And really the mission of this group is to maximize our profits through social media, through podcasting, and to minimize the total time spent on social media. And my personal goal is to make 10K a month through this method, through content in a semi-passive way and primarily on YouTube. And like I said, the reason I'm doing this is because I've seen a lot of people try to make podcasts or try to do social media for their business, and there's a huge drop-off rate. At one point, I was coaching over 150 businesses on how to use social media, and what I was doing is I was trying to teach business owners how to become content creators. And guess what? Business owners don't want to be content creators. They want to be business owners. And the amount of time it took for them to create content on a consistent basis was just too much. So it took me a long time to contemplate, how do we keep people accountable? How do we keep people committed? How do we make it easier? How do we make it faster? How do we make it more profitable? And this is kind of my strategy on how to do that. I don't know if you guys know this, but people say, oh, there's 1.8 million podcasts out there. Well, 90% of them quit after 3 episodes. 90% of those, the ones that are left, quit after 20 episodes. So really, if we post over 21 podcasts, then we're in the top 1% of producing podcasts. So it's not that oversaturated of a space, actually, when you really look at the numbers. How this works is my ideal situation is we have 2 groups of 6 people. Kind of strange because we actually have exactly 12 people on this call, but I'm looking for 2 groups of 6 or at least 1 group of 6. And I already have some people committed, but it's just kind of funny. We have exactly 12 people on the call, and each of these groups is going to be centered around a specific niche. Okay. So maybe this niche is esports and gaming, and this is over here is graphic design or Google, whatever niche that group defines. We want to just make sure that we're not all just making random podcasts about random things, that we're all kind of focusing in on a singular category. So let's break this down for just like one group, and I'll show you how this works in a microcosm. Okay, so here's all your people on week 1. Okay, week 1 we have, let's start with this, 1 and 2. So there's 6 people and we'll start with 1 and 2. Okay, week 1, this person, we'll call this person number 1, interviews guest 2. Next week, guest 2 interviews guest 1. And then after 2 weeks, we'd have one podcast where this person was interviewing this person, and we'd have another podcast of this person interviewing this person. Pretty simple. Now, when we do this with a lot of people, here's week 1, we have that. Next week, we mix it up and everybody interviews a different person. Now, remember, we're all within a niche, so it's not like we're speaking different languages. Next week, we mix it up again. And then here's a 6-week strategy where essentially after 6 weeks, we have all been a guest and guested on each other's podcast. And managing this is actually pretty easy. I decided we could use a Trello board. So in Trello, if you've ever used it, we have person interviews this person. Once you've all interviewed, you move it over into the completed tab. Once everyone's completed this, we can move on to week 2. And so everybody actually has a visual accountability calendar, essentially, right? If your video hasn't been recorded or posted, it'll kind of be out there. And so this will create some accountability. Also, will automate finding and scheduling those guest interviews. So you don't need to, where's my next podcast guest? You're in this podcast rotation. And so you have a guest every single week guaranteed. Community-based strategies. Really, there's nobody else doing this at this kind of micro level. Maybe at the really high levels, you have people very strategically doing this on a high level, but on our level, there's not a lot of people doing this, especially with all these different strategies that I've developed. First one, group keyword targeting. Group keyword targeting. This is strategy 1 under our community-based strategies. So here we have all 6 of our podcasters together. And like I said, we don't want to be creating content that's just all over the place. We want to be very direct at our niche because the point is to make a profit. The point is to make sales through this. So what we want to do, like I said, is we all want to target a specific niche. But we don't want to just label all of our videos esports gaming, right? What we actually want to do is target specific keywords within that niche. YouTube is all about keyword targeting. It's all about search. And so what are the keywords within that niche that we should be targeting as a group? Here are some possible topics and niches that we could talk about. Here's an example of it. So here's our niche, making money online. That's kind of what my niche is. In that niche, there's certain categories of content that we could make. Tech tutorials, how-to, social media marketing, masterclasses, entrepreneur stories. And within there are certain keywords. Like under tech tutorials and how-tos, the keywords would be YouTube tutorial or go high-level tutorial. Under social media marketing, the keyword would be LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Facebook Update 2023. Or under this, my name, people's names can be keywords, or how to make sales online. Under entrepreneur stories, which these are kind of the podcasts, the guest info, their name, their website, their stuff. And how I made, does everybody get that? How we're not actually targeting social media, we're targeting specific keywords within that niche, right? Another example. So week 1, we would all target a different keyword on this podcast. And then we would find which keyword performs the best. Let's say it's LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Well, the next week we have the next round of podcast, and 2 people could also make an additional video about LinkedIn Sales Navigator and maybe improve upon what the person did last week. And then what they can do is they can actually use the end screens on YouTube videos to point to that original video. And so the person who originally created that piece of content will actually benefit from the other people creating more content on that. This is a very kind of clever way, like kind of what Mr. Beast was talking about, collaborating, finding out what works, and then sharing what works, and then improving upon it, and then helping and rewarding the person who helped with that, right? And then testing out a new one each week too. So we won't all do LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We'll always be testing and finding which keywords are the best. Let's talk about the second strategy, the YouTube community tab. So on YouTube, I have 1,000 followers. Now, I know a guy, his name's Corey ASMR. He has a lot more followers than me has. Actually, this is an old screenshot. He has almost 300,000 followers now. Now, what I did was I had Corey on my podcast. You'll see my podcast down here, okay? And then what he did is he shared my podcast episode on his community tab. A lot of people aren't even aware of the community tab on YouTube. This might have been the first time Corey had ever posted to it, to be honest. And when you post to that community tab, it shares it out to his network of 300,000 people. So here's the normal performance of my video. I get about 1,000 impressions, a pretty low click-through rate, 20 views. When Corey shared it, 10x the impressions, 5 times the click-through rate, and obviously a lot more views just through sharing the video through his community tab. So here's just some more kind of analytics on it. And it actually tells me, if you go and look in the YouTube analytics, it gives you the real numbers on where that traffic is coming from. And so I can see here channel pages. That means that community tab contributed to over 90% of the views on that video. So it's a huge, huge benefit. And it is my most watched ever podcast because he shared it. So that's the strategy there, is we find people who have reach, or even if we have a modicum of reach ourselves, we can share it through the community tab. And that's a way of interlinking and promoting each other's accounts specifically on YouTube. So when we're thinking about good collaboration partners, we're thinking about people like Corey, large social media content creators, YouTubers with high engagement or high subscribers count. Kind of a traditional one as far as to have people on your podcast as authors, people who are coming out with a new book, or they don't have to be the biggest, but if they're a niche influencer or podcaster within your space, that's a good person to have on as well. And then also famous people and brands. So like maybe you get the CEO of TikTok on your podcast, right? That would be a great podcast. But just always thinking, who are people being searched for, or who are people who have a large reach on YouTube? Because this podcast, maybe I didn't say this, but this is a YouTube focused strategy. And then different ways to share: YouTube community tab, retweeting, reposting, commenting, or even sharing it out on your link, on your email list. Here's some tips on maximizing the SEO potential, is including their full name. So like when I had Corey on, his real name isn't Corey ASMR. So I put his full name, I put Corey ASMR, I put his business name, I put his website, and then I have him reposted on his social media. And all these things help with that SEO tracking for YouTube and Google. So those are the first 2 strategies there. Group keyword targeting, YouTube community tab. I got a couple more for you guys. Let's talk about the YouTube remix feature. Very, very powerful feature, YouTube remix feature. Here's just kind of more data on if your new episode gets within the first 7 days of its release, 32 downloads, you're in the top 50% of podcasters, right? And then just down the line, if you have over 5,000 views in your first 7 days, you're in the top 1% of podcasters. And what this is meant to show is that podcasters have a huge issue with reach. Promoting your podcast is very hard. I know so many people who have a podcast and nobody listens to it. Nobody. Maybe 5 people. So how do we get that podcast out there? There's really no such thing as a long form podcast unless you're Joe Rogan. And the most watched podcast of all time is Joe Rogan's interview with Elon Musk. It has over 150 million views on YouTube. When you compare that to a YouTube short, the most popular YouTube short on the internet, or the most popular short form video, is this video right here. It has 1.2 billion views on a YouTube short. Why? Because it's just a different way of consuming content. Shorts have the potential to reach a much larger audience than a podcast that's 3 hours long. And so shorts have about 13 times the reach as our podcast. So what we should really be doing is turning, and you see this all the time on social media, right? Turning your podcast into shorts. And we're going to be doing that in the fastest way possible using something called the remix feature. Then you just have this cycle over again of you take your podcast, you turn it into shorts, and your shorts direct back to the podcast. And you have this cycle, and you see a lot of podcast clips out there, right? These people aren't creating new content. They're just taking old content and repurposing it for short form video. So what's the fastest way to make YouTube shorts? Because we're all busy business owners. We don't have the time to sit around and edit our podcast all day. Well, YouTube came out with this really amazing feature called the remix. And so what I do is I edit my podcast preemptively for shorts. My podcast is essentially a conglomeration of tons of shorts. So what I do is I optimize my podcast for shorts first. I actually edit and upload my podcast so it is already ready to be edited into shorts using the YouTube remix feature. And so how do I do that? Well, I take out all the pauses in the video. My podcast, I record for 20 minutes and then I reduce it down to about 15 minutes. So it's very, very tight. And I take out any filler words. There's no you knows or how or right. I say right a lot, right? I edit the video and I post it vertically. I actually post the long form video vertically, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I also add captions, and I add captions right in the middle of the podcast. And I do all of that because that optimizes it for the short form. Here are some of my podcast videos on my YouTube channel. And if you go to them, even the long form videos, this video is 18 minutes long, I upload it vertically. And the reason I do that is because 70% of people listen to podcasts on a smartphone. 73% of people listen to this, they're washing the dishes, they're driving, they're on their commute. They're not sitting in front of their computer watching two people talk at each other. They're doing things. And then secondly, upwards to 70% of YouTube views come from a mobile device. And when you bring a long form podcast video that I uploaded vertically up on the phone, it takes up so much more screen space than a horizontal video. So a horizontal video on the phone only takes up about a third of the screen. And then they're already promoting somebody else's video that's probably better than yours, to be honest, right below it. So with my strategy on the phone, it takes up 3/4 of the screen. So it's much more immersive. And then when you look at that long form video on your phone, you'll see there's actually a button here that says remix. And if you click on that remix button on this long form video podcast that we've already optimized for shorts, it will take you to this screen. And this screen will allow you to take out any 15-second clip from a podcast and post that as a YouTube short. You don't edit it though. It's just a quick 15-second grab from any place in that video. And then it's going to post it as a YouTube short. And then here's really the biggest thing, guys, about this is the biggest thing is that when you use this YouTube remix feature, there is a button on that remixed video that links them back to the original long form podcast. I really want you guys to realize that when you use the remix feature on a YouTube video, it creates a link. And if they click that, it will direct them back into the long form video podcast. I've done this on a lot of my videos. So here are some of the results with the remix. It's kind of all over the board. Here's 33, but this one got 2,000, numbers with 1,000. So I really feel like YouTube is pushing this remix feature a lot. And this podcast that I have here, I can actually see in those YouTube analytics that almost 20% of the views came through that remix feature. It's actually a great way to promote your podcast. Like I said, because podcasts don't have a high level of organic reach. Nobody watches your podcast. How do you do it? You promote it with those viral shorts using the remix feature, and then it directs people right into the podcast. Here's been some results of myself personally. I've had over 300,000 views through YouTube shorts in a pretty short period of time using the remix feature. So very, very effective. My podcast definitely doesn't have 360,000 views for sure. So that's strategy 3, the YouTube remix feature. I think, Nancy, you might have had a question, or do we have any questions on the YouTube remix feature?
Yeah, my question, so you're showing how to do this on your phone, but do you have to do the YouTube remix on your phone, or can you do it on a desktop?
You have to do it on a phone. Go ahead, Steven, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious if this applies to audio podcasts as well, even if you put the audio on YouTube.
Yes.
Like audio only, not video.
Yeah, it would apply. Is it going to be as effective? No, but it would apply. Yeah. You could still do audio, because even an audio that you upload to YouTube is uploaded as an MP4.
Okay. So you could turn that, you could remix that as well.
Yeah, I would add like a visual, just like a static
Okay.
or like a looping visual on it. That's what I would do.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then definitely add captions too. Because if somebody watches that YouTube short and it's audio only, it's definitely getting switched off of. But if it has a little bit of a graphic and some subtitle tracking, it could, but it's definitely not going to do as well as that format. I've done a lot of testing, and this is how you want to format your podcast. Speaker on top, host on bottom, captions in the middle. I've just found out of every single type of podcast, this is the best format for it.
I have a question. Are you recording your podcast in the video format, top to bottom, or are you remixing it to get it there?
I'm going to show you my entire process of how I record it, but I'm recording it in something called Riverside. And then I'm able to export it in that stacked vertical style. But that's a great question. Let's move on. Fourth strategy, maximizing monetization. Most podcasts make $0. A lot of people will say podcasts aren't supposed to make money. They're supposed to be tools that you use to, I need money, guys. I need this podcast to be profitable for my business. That's why I'm doing it. So how do we maximize the possible monetization of our podcast? These are, I think, the best kind of methods of monetizing your podcast. And remember, we're doing these strategies in a community sense or in a community way, right? Here are some of the different things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because I'm sure you guys can just understand it from this visual here. But we have courses, right? And I like courses because it's passive income. There's no extra labor. You create it once, you get paid on it forever. There could be a high commission share, infinitely scalable, and it positions you as an expert in your industry too. If you have a really high level, great, well-selling course, right? Ad spend. So on YouTube, they have something called ad spend. If you reach 1,000 followers and over 300, or sorry, they actually reduced it. If you reach 500 subscribers and have 3,000 hours of watch time, you qualify for ad spend, meaning that you get paid essentially on every view because they run advertisement on it. Sponsors. Now, problem with sponsors is you do need kind of a large podcast. The conversion rates for sponsorships can be pretty low. It can be really profitable for you as a podcaster, but they are difficult to find and maintain on a long-term basis. But it is an avenue for making money. And then community groups. I'm really big into community groups. It's not necessarily a passive way to make money, but it is a great way to create repeatable business month after month, develop super fans, and like I said, create monthly recurring income. And then the affiliates. So part of what we're doing here in Podcast Circle is creating kind of an affiliate network, right? All supporting and promoting each other's affiliate links. And so what I'm going to help everybody do is first develop an affiliate product. It could be a course, it could be a service, it could be a physical product, but everybody should have an affiliate offer. And then everybody, if you want to be a part of this group, will also need an affiliate dashboard. That's for transparency as far as the affiliate goes. We don't want it to be behind paywall. We want to be as clear as day of who's entitled to what money as far as the affiliate commissions go. Here's how the affiliate system would work. Back to kind of our example of the two people. We have podcaster one, we'll say it's me, podcast host, and I have my podcast, and I have on podcast guests. And in the description of that YouTube video, in the description of my YouTube video, I have the guest info, and I have an affiliate link to my guest's product. So if that product gets sold through this YouTube video, this person profits, and I also make a commission. Next week, this person is the podcast host, and I'm the guest. And in the description of that video, they have my information, and this person has an affiliate link to my product. So if this video sells something, yes, I get paid, but also the person who's produced and made the podcast will get paid on it as well. And here's how we can promote kind of that affiliate link. This is just kind of a detail of how would you do the YouTube description to promote the person's product? And here's just kind of an example of my take on it, but everybody can have their own take. The fourth strategy, maximizing monetization through affiliates, through courses, through the remix feature, all this different stuff we're using to really grow our podcast in a significant way, and then finding different methods of monetization through the podcast. Okay. And I have I had 4 other strategies that we just don't have time to go over today. But let me walk you through of how I edit my podcast and how kind of the workflow will be developed for people in this group. We're going to do the scheduling through Calendly or through just scheduling like Calendly. I suggest you record in something called Riverside. The advantage of Riverside is that this Zoom presentation is being recorded over the cloud. It's being recorded online. And so if my internet connection goes down, the quality of this recording will go down. On Riverside, that's not the case. It records natively on your computer, and then it uploads that video separately. And so the quality of the video, the audio, the video is never interrupted. So it's great technology. I use it. And then that also allows you to export that video vertically. Then what I do is I actually will take the audio from that podcast and I will detach it. I'll take that MP4 and I'll get the MP3. And the reason I take that MP3 off is so I can improve it in something called Adobe Podcast. If you're not familiar with Adobe Podcast, it's probably the most beneficial podcasting software that's ever been developed for podcasters, no exaggeration. Once I improve the audio, I reattach that MP3 to the video, and then I edit that script, taking out all the ums, all the pauses, everything. I do that in a software called the script, okay? So schedule, I record in Riverside, we improve the audio, we then reattach the audio, and then we edit the podcast itself in something called a script, and then we upload that video to YouTube. And I'm going to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to do this in the Podcast Circle course. So everybody who does decide if they do want to become part of the Podcast Circle, they'll get that step-by-step information here at the end of the month. I'm going to have that finished. So if you aren't familiar on how to do all that podcast editing, I can walk you through the process. That is what we have laid out. The pricing for this, it's not free, but the pricing for this is $97 a month. And what that gets you is one seat at the Podcast Circle. You're going to get the podcasting course. You're going to get into our podcast community. We're going to have a meeting every single week, discussing strategies, discussing what we learned. We're not going to meet every day like Mr. Beast. We're just going to meet once a week. And you also get a 10% affiliate commission. If you need a little bit of help, if you want to save a little bit of time, I developed another package, I guess you could say, which is you'll get everything included in basic, but I'll also give you a basic edit and basic audio improvement. So I'll take out any talking at the beginning, I'll take out any talking at the end, and then I'll do that Adobe audio improvement for you. Now, if you want to add captions and you want to edit all the pause and all the ums, you can do that yourself. But honestly, that little edit there will make the podcast good enough in a way. I'll also give you access to my Riverside recording studio, so you won't have to pay for it yourself. It's about $30 to $60 a month. So you'll get that for free because I can be your producer. And then you'll get a 20% affiliate commission on all of the products. And if you're looking to really save a lot of time, if you just want me to kind of do that entire editing and all that process for you, we have a premium package. It's meant for people who just want to record for 1 hour a week and that's it. And then I'll do everything else. I do all the podcast production. I edit it just like I edit my videos. And you also get priority interviews with the influencers that we bring in. This should actually say a 30% commission. I'm sorry. So you'll get a 30% commission on all of the different products. So a lot of commission potential there. And that's kind of one of the other strategies that I didn't talk about is once we have this great group of people, we can bring in big influencers and say, hey, we want to get you not on one podcast, but on 6 podcasts. We're really going to get you out there. And that's going to be really enticing to a larger influencer. Hey, come on my small podcast. Oh, no, I'm good. Well, I have an entire podcast network and we're going to get you on a podcast every week for the next 6 weeks. Oh, wow, that's a great deal. And we're going to edit it and it's going to look amazing. And here's what we've been doing, right? So that's another strategy. And if you pay the higher amount, you're going to get priority to those kind of higher level people. But we are at the end of the presentation. Love to hear your feedback. Like I said, the first time I've ever done this and kind of mapped everything out. What are your guys' thoughts, feedback? Yeah.
I think it's pretty solid plan.
Yeah, pretty solid.
I like that. It's different for me because I don't record in that way and I'm old and the whole world, for a long time was this way. And so now it's this. But I am a huge of working from the end in mind. And so figuring out how to do it smarter on the front end so it's easier on the back end is like really, really bright. So thank you.
And what I do is I can just go in my podcast library. Every day I wake up, I just go in my podcast library. I use that remix feature and I'm able to put out an edited, great YouTube short in literally a minute or 2 minutes. The YouTube remix feature, it's so underutilized and YouTube boosts it like crazy. Like those podcast clips that I have, they're not even that good necessarily, but they get a ton of views because YouTube is like juicing that feature because they want people to start using it more and more and more. And I'd say 95% of people have no idea it even exists or how to use it or what context to use it.
Preach.
Yep. I'll say this too. I am working with a small group of people. I want to have one group. I have a special price, a special deal. You have to apply. So reach out to me if you're interested, but it'll be for the first year if you do want to become part of the podcast circle, but you have to meet certain criteria. You have to be in a certain niche because I have people who are already committed at that level and we're looking for a few extra people to add on. That's out there for, like I said, a select group of people. And the goal isn't to grow this to 1,000 members or anything. Like this isn't, I'm going to make $1 million off of this. I'm going to benefit because I'm going to be one of the people in the podcast circle. I'm going to be promoting people's affiliate offers. And I think I'll make enough money through this method that it will pay for itself essentially. So, but there is a lot of work. There's a lot of organization. People will need help. So
I think just the proximity of being close to you and having the relationship and with you continuously learning and growing and evolving and improving the way that you have that I've watched over the last, year almost now, just that proximity alone there's so much power in that. I mean, look at the people that are on this call today. Yeah. So I think that speaks for itself. So if somebody can't invest into themselves, they're not giving you money, they're investing into themselves. So I think this is a no-brainer deal.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, appreciate you, man. Adrian,
100%. Getting the algorithm activity from the constant loop back and the pushing it back to the original content. I just did one with a gentleman the other day. We did an interview, and suddenly I got hey, such and such wants you to collaborate on this reel, and he posted 15 seconds, like you said, and it's in vertical format, and it's me captioned the whole thing with one thing that I said out of that 45-minute discussion, and it's going crazy on Instagram right now because he has some followers, I have some followers. We posted it, and it caught because it was short, right? So I love the idea of the interaction of the algorithm going back and forth, because it just gets going, right? And as the activity builds activity, they're both here, and let's roll with it and make it go, right? And this will make it happen. So I've told you already, I'm in, Alex. Let's do this.
Yeah, and when you target that niche and you become the big people within that niche, it just starts to rank you higher and higher. Google builds your authority. I mean, Robin comes from the Google space. He has a great understanding of this, of how interconnecting all of those different accounts and reposting each other and promoting each other. It creates something called an affinity cluster, where Google says, wow, all these people are interested in this group of people. And so they start directing that traffic. So it definitely does work.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients who are marketing agencies and various people in the video space. And one of the things we keep talking about is there's nobody out there helping you actually know what to do with it once you've created it. And so I like the remix fixture, right? Like I said, I said this to my client all the time. I said, it's not enough to just create it. Like, it should be a standard that the quality is already there. It shouldn't be the stretch. It should be the given. Then what do you do with it? I knew how it connected to things. And where's the biggest gap now? Distribution. So just a tip there is you got to get into the distribution network.
Yep.
Otherwise, this is a gigantic waste of time.
Yeah, most podcasts are a gigantic waste of time because nobody sees them. It doesn't matter how good it is. There's just no way to promote it. But I think it was Tyler, the Creator, if you're familiar with that rapper. He came out with an album, and he's been promoting it for 3 years. People say, don't you want to move on to something else? He says, people aren't even aware I made this album 3 years ago. But most people create a podcast and they promote it once. They posted it on their LinkedIn. Hey, I was on this podcast with somebody. And then that's the last time they ever promote it.
If you even get that, this is the other part. Like, the whole guesting thing is, I want to tell my story. I said, what's the purpose to the audience? Where are you leading this to? What's going to be from the following? And I think there's some real strong growth when you think backwards the other way.
The reason I started this was because I do a lot of online business networking, and there's a lot of inefficiency in it. There's a lot of wanting to collaborate, but how do we actually collaborate in a way that's meaningful and will have an impact on our business? And truthfully, I haven't seen anybody develop any strategy that does something like this, where it leverages online relationships to promote ourselves outside of like a LinkedIn posting party. But that's definitely not as effective as this. Cool, guys. Well, I'm going to post this to the YouTube channel. Please feel welcome to share this with whoever you'd like. I'm going to be doing this presentation for the next 4 weeks. This exact same presentation on a weekly basis for the next 4 weeks, just to get the word out there, to get my presentation kind of down. And then I'm going to have a great YouTube video to put out there online. I really appreciate everybody waking up early today, coming to this meeting early. Hope you learned a lot. If you want to get involved, I'll put my link in the chat if you'd like to schedule a meeting with me to learn more about the podcast circle. Like I said,
Keep staying